Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Your Overseas Home webinar, which today we are focusing on managing your money and finances when making your move to Cyprus. My name's Hannah, and I'm one of the team here at Your Overseas Home. You may have already come across us as a business, or you may also know our sister business, Property Guides. As a group of companies, we have been assisting buyers now with their property purchases for nearly 15 years. We do that by sharing valuable resources with you, introducing you to contacts and industry experts in this field, helping you avoid any pitfalls, save money, and crucially, make it as fun and exciting as possible for you. Now, today I'm joined by two industry experts in the field of finances. First up, you will hear from Paul Harris of Smart Currency Exchange. After that, I will introduce Andrew Lumley-Holmes from Chase Buchanan. For those of you who are joining and listening in live today, if you have any questions for Paul or Andrew, please do submit them using the questions tab on the right-hand side of your screen. You will also see in there, we've got a polls section. We've got one quick question, one quick poll that we would like to put to you, the audience, today. So if you do have 2 seconds, do fill that in for us. Your answers are confidential, but it will just help us tailor today's session slightly. So on to our first panelist for the day, and as I mentioned, that's Paul Harris of Smart Currency Exchange. Now, Paul has been helping buyers manage their currency needs and transactions for 10 years now. He and his team at Smart Currency Exchange are based here in the UK and are on hand to be able to help with any kind of transfer or transaction that you may have. So welcome today, Paul. And could I ask you to start by giving us an introduction to Smart Currency Exchange and how you can help our listeners today?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Hannah. And good morning, everyone, or good afternoon now, sorry. So yeah, we're here to help you with the currency transaction, moving money into Cyprus, obviously to be able to pay for the property that you will find. But first, a little bit of a background into us and Smart Currency and what we do, and a little bit of a sort of history of the business. So we've been around for over 15 years now. And we've helped over 40,000 people in exactly the same positions as yourselves to really buy, afford, and achieve their dream property overseas. We help you with primarily the currency transactions. So we look at managing the risk of any potential downsides of the market and really keep your costs as low and as affordable as possible when it comes to exchange rates and the currency transactions as well. And those of you that will have potentially signed up to an account already may have already spoken with either a member of my team or a member of the trading team, and you'll see straight away that we can give you advice on not just the currency side, but we do have a wealth of knowledge in the actual buying process as well. And anything we don't know, we've obviously got our trusted partner network that we can refer you to as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Paul, for that intro. Now, I just wanted to start by asking, when in their buying journey should customers be thinking about currency? I'm sort of assuming, at the end when you're coming to make that completion on your purchase and you need, the euros or whatever transaction you're doing. When do they need to talk to you guys?
We would say straight away. So the actual process and mechanisms of transferring the money will probably actually be one of the last things you do, actually moving the money to pay for it, maybe later in the journey. But if you're looking at properties online and you're doing a search, or you're speaking to an estate agent, you'll be speaking about an area in Cyprus that you want to buy, a type of property, how many bedrooms, does it have a swimming pool, is it near the beach, etc., etc. There will always be a price point as well there, so you'll be looking at how much it actually costs. You may be given prices in euros, maybe given prices in pounds, either way around. We can help you understand how much it's going to cost you in pounds, or how many euros you're going to get for the pounds price that you're quoted as well. So even if you're not ready to actually physically transact, it's still definitely worthwhile speaking to us, and we can start helping you out in the journey.
Sorry, technical issue there. Thank you, Paul. Now, I know, you've explained to me in the past that Smart have got such a fantastic range of different types of transactions and products and services that customers can use. Are you able to just give us a bit of an overview to those different products that you can offer?
Absolutely, yeah. So if you've done some research already, you may have seen online spot contracts, forward contracts, and they're the two main contracts that we would book. The difference between the two is quite significant, actually. So a spot contract is a quick contract, so a contract that we would book for you today at today's exchange rate. You send the money to us as soon as you can, and as soon as you receive the funds, they would be sent out to Cyprus for you. So really quick, really good. If you need to get money into Cyprus quickly, it's a very good product for you. But when it comes to actually purchasing the property and sending the money over for the actual purchase, the most popular product we have is a forward contract. So a forward contract works differently. So say, for example, you're in Cyprus or you're doing a virtual viewing trip, you find the right property for you, you find the dream house, you want to buy it, you sign on the dotted line. So you'll agree a price at that point in euros. So that euro price is going to be fixed, and that won't change. That is how much that is how much the property costs and how much you've agreed to pay. There may be a bit of a lead time between when you sign and when you actually complete. So let's say 3 months is normally roughly the average time between the two. So within that 3 months period, your euro price is staying the same, but how much it's going to cost you, and I'll use pound sterling as an example just for now, that pound sterling cost is going to change. It's going to go up and down dependent on the exchange rate at the time. So it doesn't. The property could end up costing you more or less depending on if the markets go up or down. Now, forward contract is brilliant because it gives you complete peace of mind that you've agreed your price in euros. We can agree today's price in let's say in sterling again, and that price won't change. So we agree a price today and you pay for the full contract in 3 months' time. So you know at that point how much it's costing euros, how much it's costing you in sterling, and there's not going to be any changes there for you. The way it works, we take a 10% deposit, which isn't a fee. It's just 10% of the total cost of the contract. So that 10% just locks the rate in for you. And then on completion day, you pay, or just before the completion day, you pay the remaining 90% and the funds are ready to go. So it gives you complete peace of mind, takes all the risk out of the equation. You know how much it's costing you in euros and you know how much it's costing you in pounds. And it really gives you that peace of mind. You don't have to worry that it's going to cost you any more or any less. You've got your price, you know where you are. You can worry about other things and focus on different areas of moving over or whichever area that you're looking into at that time. Two other options that we do have for you are orders. So an order to buy or an order to call. So if, again, using the same example, you sign on the dotted line, you've got your price in euros agreed. The exchange rate, though, at that time isn't quite where you want it to be. So you want it to be high. We want the property to be cheaper based on the current exchange rate. We can target those exchange rates for you. So just picking a number out of the air now, again, if we use sterling euro as the example, you want 120. We're not there at the moment, but that's what you want to be transacting at. We can target that for you and put a marker on the market to say, okay, if it gets to 120, if we put an order to call in, we're going to give you a call, tell you that the rate's achieved. We can transact at this amount now. Are you happy to proceed? In order to buy, you would send the funds to us up front, and as soon as that rate is hit, it triggers the contract, and you've got that exchange rate that you were striving for. The most important thing with orders, we can't guarantee that we're going to get there. We're still working on the live market. It doesn't matter how close we are. If we don't get there, we don't get there. So it does come with a slight added risk. You haven't protected, obviously, because you haven't booked ahead of time. You are still sort of waiting. It can pay off, absolutely. We could get to that mark. If we were going for the 120, we could get there, but we also might not. And we could end up, if you get close to completion day, it could be that the exchange rate's actually lower than where we started. So things will actually end up costing more. So they are great products, but it is important to note that just because we're targeting something doesn't mean we necessarily can guarantee it. Because we still need the market to get up to that level for you. So for full peace of mind, the forward contract's great. If you wanted to sort of, not necessarily, gamble's not always the right word for it, but if you wanted to wait out and see if the rates improve, orders are a good option. Or if you did want to just leave it till the last minute, which obviously doesn't give you any real flexibility, the spot contract is there for you. But all those options are available depending on your circumstances.
Thanks, Paul. That's a fantastic introduction to everything that you can do. And we've got a lot of questions coming in now. So first of all, I'm going to start with a question from John, who's asked, basically, if the pandemic was to, push back his buying plans and he'd entered into a forward contract with Smart, but then he was delayed for whatever reason, can you extend that contract? Can you cancel that contract? Is there anything you can do for clients in that situation?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we can. And it's not all pandemic related. It's not a new thing that we do just because we're in the situation that we're in. We've been, as I said earlier, we've been helping people in the exact same situation for a number of years now. We know, similarly to buying in the UK, you may get in a chain. There may be changes of plans, things get delayed. You may have a survey result that actually, when you survey the property, it might not be right for you. There might be something that flags up. So, or you may just cancel completely. So we can work with you on that depending on the circumstance. So if you are completely cancelling, decide that actually moving overseas, not for me anymore, want to stay where you are at the moment, and you've entered into a contract already, we can cancel that contract. If it's a forward contract, let's use that as an example. As I said at the start, we take the 10% deposit. Now, that doesn't mean you lose your 10% deposit. It's not a non-refundable deposit. We take that basically to protect the contract for you. So the reason we can guarantee the exchange rate is we buy all the euros at that point. So if it's 100,000 euros, for example, we buy that 100,000 euros. Even if you're not going to pay us for another 3 months, we still hold it for you. If we then cancel, we sell the euros back. And now, if there are any potential losses between when we bought and when we're selling, that could potentially come out of the deposit. But we would always let you know if there are any losses and try and work out ways of not having that cost. That's not in our interest to book contracts and cancel them and make money on cancellations, because we don't make the money. It just covers the cancellation costs. So it's not in either side's interests to be doing that. So we'll always work with you to keep that cost low. The other point to the question was obviously extending contracts, and that's absolutely something we can do. So we call it a roll, basically. So we will roll the contract on to a future date. So again, if there's any delays for whatever reason, again, and you need to say, you just give us a call, say, look, it's not going to complete on this date. I need to push the date back 3 months or however many months it's going to be, up to 12 months, we would say. Absolutely, we can do that. And you can work with the trader and they can extend contracts for you. So yeah, we can be flexible. We like, as I said, we've been around in the industry for long enough to know that these things do happen, and we can work with you to make sure that it's as stress-free as possible.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul. Now, Gary's asked, how long, assuming there are no issues or complications, how long would a forward contract traditionally be valid for?
It's whatever time limit you set. So we would typically say we would book one for maximum up to 12 months. We can go further than 12 months. Typically with property purchase over 12 months is very unlikely anyway. But it may be that you like today's exchange rate, you want to buy next year, and you know for 100% fact I'm buying next year, then yes, we can put one in for that period of time. Typically it will be between, as the example I used earlier, between the date you agree and the date you complete, which is around the 3-month mark, typically across Europe. But it can be shorter, it can be longer. It's whatever your individual requirements are.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. We've had another question in. A customer's just saying that he understands that Smart might be able to get better rates than the banks, but how would Smart compare with some of the online platforms, such as TransferWise?
Okay, so yes, absolutely, we can beat the banks. That's no problem at all. The online platforms like TransferWise are great. Yeah, they're very good. You can obviously log in, do the transfers yourself. They'll only offer you a spot contract, so it will be debt rates on the day, and it's the given rate. There's no one to speak to potentially negotiate at all, I guess, on those exchange rates. They are very competitive, as with anything online. We have an online platform ourselves, and the rates that we can offer on our online platform are always slightly better than what we can offer over the phone, as with anything online. But it doesn't mean we can't beat TransferWise. They're not offering unachievable exchange rates. They're not offering unachievable costs. And if we're using TransferWise as an example, they structure it slightly differently. So For example, they will offer an exchange rate, but they'll have a big fee. Whereas we work a different. We don't work that way. There's no fees. The difference is between the market price and our price is essentially our fee, but it's not an upfront cost on top. So there are subtle differences. Most importantly, really, is using ourselves over TransferWise. You get the full complete package. Really, you get to speak to someone. You get the full guidance, and you've got a much wider range of options of how to transfer the funds. So orders, forward contracts, etc. And you have someone working with you to do all the legwork for you. Whereas with a company like TransferWise, you're logging in and using your own assumptions to book those transfers in, which is not to say people listening don't have a good knowledge of FX. If you do, then great. But we do have that obviously flexibility for you.
Thanks, Paul. That's really helpful, and I hope that has answered a few questions that have come in on that topic. You touched on it a little bit there in your answer. You mentioned fees and things. Can you just clarify how your fees work for the different products you've talked about?
Sure. So we don't charge any fees on any of our products. As I mentioned earlier, the forward contract has a deposit, but it's not a fee. It's just a percentage of the overall cost of the contract, so not a fee. We do obviously make our money, and as I sort of touched on it very briefly there, if you were to Google again, I'll use sterling euro as the example. If you were to Google GBP to EUR on Google, you'd see a price there on XE, or on Google they'll give you a price. That's the interbank price or market price. That's where the banks will be trading with each other. We aren't even able to buy at that rate from our bank. It's very close, but not quite that level. So we buy there and we sell to you at a slightly different rate. We make our money just between the two exchange rates there, but it's a very small margin that's on the top. So there's no fee to yourselves at all. The exchange rate that we offer you and the amounts that we tell you that we're going to send are set in stone. There's no hidden fees in the background or upfront costs.
Brilliant, thank you. And I'm conscious of our time now, but I want to make sure I just answer one question. It's a great question that's come in from David. He said if he were to enter into a forward contract and then the pound were to strengthen, can he revert to the sort of spot rate, or is he in that forward contract?
So you're in the forward contract because we've already agreed it. It's a great question. Obviously, we can book a forward contract and the exchange rates could improve. And that's the only slight, I guess you could say, potential downside of a forward contract is that if you'd waited and booked at a later date, it could have been better off. There are ways around that if you potentially wanted to cancel the forward and move on to the spot contract. Again, that's something you would have to talk very closely with the trader about before you actually did anything, as they would talk you through the cancellation process and the rebooking process. But it's possible, but once you're in a forward contract, you can't just leave it and switch it. You're in that forward contract because, like I said earlier, we've bought all the euros up front for you.
That's brilliant. That's really helpful advice. Thank you so much, Paul. And I hope that's answered all of the questions that we've had coming in there. As I say, conscious of our time, so I am going to move on, but we will share Paul and his team's details at the end, and he'll be able to answer any of those specific questions that have come in about your detailed requirements. And as he said, do get in contact as soon as you can to get those queries answered and start taking advantage of the fantastic team at Smart and the services that they can help you with. So thanks very much for your time there, Paul. So now moving on to Andrew from Chase Buchanan. Now, Andrew is UK qualified with over 20 years of experience in this field, and his expertise is able to cover the UK, Europe, and North America. He can advise on things such as UK pensions transfers, portfolio events, investments, and tax planning. So thank you, Andrew, for joining us today. First of all, I will hand over to you to go through your presentation, and then we will get some of the customers' questions answered by you at the end. So over to you.
Sure, thank you very much, Hannah. Like I say, I just want to really run through a very brief, just quick overview of Chase Buchanan today, and then we'll get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty of actually getting yourselves over to Cyprus. I'm sat here today, to be fair, we are based here, I'm over in Limassol. It's a balmy 32 degrees today, so starting to get a little bit warm, but not really complaining. Definitely a little bit warm for a jacket, but we're okay. So why Chase Buchanan, just very briefly. I guess the biggest thing we have is that strength of our regulation and our footprint across borders. So without getting into too much detail, essentially what we have is we have the European regulatory side. So we're fully licensed to, as Hannah said, to do investment, pensions, kind of whatever you want to do on this side. We have the insurance license for Europe as well. We also have a UK license as well. So we do genuinely have feet in both sides of that camp. And that means basically we're very well positioned to be able to help you understand when you are transitioning yourself over to Cyprus, what you do need to do or what you don't need to do in order to transition the other bits and pieces and the assets and the investments and things like that you have as well. We do also have on the last page here as well, we have a tax consultancy as well. So what we really aim to do for clients is we aim to kind of be a one-stop shop to make sure that when they're looking at how they move their assets, their investments, their pensions, and what they're doing with that once they become Cyprus resident, that it's right from a financial planning perspective, right from a tax perspective. And ultimately, I always say to everybody that I meet up with first time is that my job is very, very simply to show you the options that are available so that you can make informed choices, because at the end of the day, it's your money, it's not mine. But we're here to guide you through those options so you understand, okay, if I do A, B will happen. If I choose D, option E will happen. So we are regulated out of Cyprus. That's a copy of our Cyprus Securities and Exchange Commission licenses. So it's basically kind of the Rolls Royce of licensing that you can get in Europe. And just in terms of our broader exposure, just in case you end up changing your mind about Cyprus, we do also have offices in Portugal. You may have seen the Portugal seminar we did earlier, Spain, UK. So again, if you end up coming to Cyprus, you stay here for 4 or 5 years, something happens, you need to go back to the UK, we can continue and help with that transition back and forth on that side as well. In Cyprus office, there's myself. I'm actually one of the directors of the company. So I'm a director of both the insurance company and the wealth management side. And we also have Jill. Between us, we've got 50 years of experience, both across the UK and Europe. You know, lots of specialist expertise there in terms of managing that transition for clients. And I mean, it's very rare we come across a question that we can't answer. But on that odd occasion that it does happen, we have people that we can speak to and bring on board with some of our preferred partners as well. For example, for the Forex side with smart currency. Little plug there for Paul, he'll be happy. In terms of our services, very broadly, it's anything you would expect a UK financial advisor to do. So really, if it's something you've dealt with a UK financial advisor on, we basically do that, but in the offshore space. So pensions, investments, discretionary fund management, financial planning, tax planning, retirement, savings, health insurance, life insurance, mortgages, you know, they're pretty much the works. Again, just a few names that we work with, you know, companies that you'll have heard of here, like Bruin, Schroders, Fidelity, Threadneedle, Fundsmith. You know, we work with all of the big brand names in the industry. So it's not just ourselves that you're dealing with, but it's massive multi-billion, trillion-dollar funds and investment houses that we place clients with and work with too. The process that we go through really is quite simple and straightforward. First things first, normally just an introductory call. Last year or so, that's been very much by Zoom. So this has become a bit more normal, this kind of approach to business. But, you know, if you're over here, happy to sit down, have a cup of coffee, you know, show you a nice bar or restaurant if you want me to, whatever you kind of fancy. I've got a good list. But really have a chat through and understand kind of, okay, where are you now? Where are you trying to get to? And what are the options that are available to kind of get between those points? We'll analyze those needs. We'll put together a plan for you. And then if you decide that actually, do you know what, this feels right, we'd like to push forward on this, we'll help you implement that. And then obviously continuous ongoing review, monitoring, et cetera, of whatever we've put in place there. And I must say we are in a bit of a period of change post-Brexit. So definitely that review process is something that's very important right now. And for us, it's all about that servicing. Okay, it's about making sure that we put you in the right place, not just now, but 6 months later, 2 years later, 5 years later, that what we've got there is still the right thing for you and your personal situation. So a little checklist. I wanted to kind of do, I kind of try to stay away from the formal pitch here today and move down a bit more of a question and answer type style. So if you're looking at leaving the UK, you've gone, right, do you know what? I love Paia, I love Protaras. I'm ready to go. I've booked my forward contract. What do I do now? Plan well in advance is the first thing to say. The sooner you kind of start this process, the better you understand when you have to implement each part of that, okay? There's some bits which you can't do until you're already resident here. There's other bits which are more tax beneficial if you do them before you leave the UK. So it's definitely worth starting this conversation as soon as possible, because it just allows us to show you those opportunities before you get out here and we go, actually, if we'd done this a month ago before you left the UK, it would have been far more beneficial. So plan well in advance. Find a good estate agent, get a good Forex dealer, Paul's your man for that one, find a lawyer. With any of these bits, if you don't have anyone that you know, let us know, we can help you out, can point you in the right direction, but Your Overseas Home have some great contacts on that point as well. Get your removals quotes. Again, if you want a couple of good removals companies, let us know, I can point you in the right direction of some good UK standard companies that are not just gonna throw your boxes off the back of the van into your front drive. And trust me, that happens sometimes. Get your S1 health card. Okay, that's really important because that allows you to register with the national, or the equivalent of the National Health Service here in Cyprus. Okay, so that S1 health card is a really important step. That's something you need to do about 3 months before you leave. Get copies of all of your documentation. So don't just bring your documentation. You want 3, 4, 5 copies of it. Okay, in Cyprus, still kind of old school, okay? Everything is still very much paper-based here, okay? There's no real digital world in Cyprus. You've got to turn up, you've got to deliver your paperwork, and most of the time they're going to want to retain copies of those documents. So if you can get all those done before you leave, it just makes your life a million times easier when you get here. Wind up your UK property sales, your tenancies, etc. UK bank accounts, a bit of an issue at the moment with some companies. Particularly some of the big companies, they're getting a little bit funny post-Brexit about clients retaining a UK bank account with a non-UK address. So just check with your bank that they will allow you to continue to hold that account once you end up in Cyprus, okay? Because we are seeing that's starting to be an issue for clients. Again, get your post forwarding done. If you're bringing any pets out, check the rules. So the rules have changed post-Brexit, so you do need a lot more jabs and paperwork for your pets. It used to be very, very easy. You had your EU passport, pop down to your vets, you could get out here. But that is, again, it's just a lot more complex post-Brexit than it was if you'd been coming out November, December last year. This has been a very different seminar. For Cyprus, what do you need? Okay, so obviously number one in the world we live in now, make sure your COVID documentation is in check. We're seeing a lot of people that are even not being allowed to board the flights on EasyJet's side if they can find an EasyJet flight, But make sure you've got the right documentation. You don't want to get to the airport and find they won't even let you on the plane. UK driving license is still valid here in Cyprus for hire cars and things. If you become a resident here, at the moment, the rules are you have to change that to a UK driving license within 6 months. You have 90 days to apply for residence once you get here. So if you land on the 1st of January, you basically have until the end of March before you have to apply for residence. Now, here we have something called a new system, actually, where you apply something called an ME UK1 or an ME UK3. Generally, most people will be applying for ME UK1 when they first get out here. Now, the requirements for that, normally for most people that are coming out here, if you're not coming out for employment or self-employment, that's a different process. If you're coming out here for retirement, which is what most Brits tend to do, generally you need to have a certain amount of funds in the bank. At the moment, that's very little. It's about 10,000 euros. Or you need to have a set level of income. Again, at the moment, that's about 14,000 euros a year, okay? I will caveat this slightly by saying these are under review in Cyprus at the moment, okay? So they are reviewing the requirements for residency. These are basically transitional arrangements that they've put in place since Brexit. We expect these to change at some point this year, but we don't know exactly when that's going to be. but we don't expect them to change too much. So I wouldn't worry, I wouldn't worry too much, but we do expect those to change at some point. You do now need private healthcare, for example. So again, to register with the National Health, you need the S1. You do need private healthcare, but there's some very, very cheap health insurance which is appropriate for the visa applications, for the residency applications. It's about 160 euros for the year, but just bear in mind you will need that as part of the application process now. Get a local bank account here. I would recommend Bank of Cyprus. Other banks are available, don't get me wrong, but Bank of Cyprus is about as close to a UK banking experience as you can get out here, which is not very close. But they're very good. We bank with them as a company. I bank with them personally. They're about as good as you can get here. If you do want to import your car, you can do that. Again, there's some very good companies out here that deal with removals, deal with that car import. Fairly easy to do, very little taxes to pay as well on the import, assuming you've owned your car for more than 6 months before you move out here, okay? So as long as you can prove you've owned that car for a little bit of time, you can bring your car out here very, very easily without paying a load of import tax and bits and pieces when you get out here. This point here is quite important. So what's your tax periods, okay? Cyprus, the tax year runs from the 1st of January to the 31st of December, okay? In the UK, it runs from April to April. So you've got to be a little bit careful, because what you don't want to do is get caught up in both tax years, okay? So there is a small risk there that, let's say, if you end up moving on like the 6th of April out to Cyprus, potentially you could end up being, sorry, the other way around, sorry. So if you end up moving to Cyprus, say like November time, there's potential you can end up double tax, and it's not an issue because you'll end up being tax resident in one and you reclaim from the other. But just be a little bit careful about when you're looking to move, because you can just make your life way, way easier if you move so you're a very clean tax resident of one or the other. So you don't want to be spending. So to be a tax resident, you have to be in a country for more than 183 days. If you're not sure, give us a quick bell, drop us an email. I can just talk you through the dates. It's very, very simple, very, very straightforward. And it's very easy to just make sure you don't have that issue. When you do leave the UK, you also have to fill in something called a P85. That is a notification to HMRC, which basically says, hi, HMRC, I have now left the UK. I am no longer a resident in the UK for tax purposes. And that's just, that gets you that clean break in terms of requirements for HMRC reporting and bits and pieces like that. It can also mean if you are having tax deducted at source on your UK pensions, you can get issued an NT tax code, which is a no tax code, which means those pensions can potentially be paid gross to you as well. So again, just stops you having to do a tax return and reclaim the tax paid. It's just, again, about managing that clean break from an income, from a tax point of view for you guys when you get out here. And let's be honest, that's one of the benefits of Cyprus. It's a very low tax rate. The other bit as well, you might actually find that a lot of a lot of UK advisors actually won't be able to continue looking after you once you get to Cyprus. So this is an issue we come across quite a lot. And it's one of the reasons that we get quite a few inquiries into the business here, is that actually when a client moves to Cyprus, because the UK authorized advisor doesn't have the right permissions to be able to operate here, often they'll have to actually send you a notification to say, look, we can't help you. So again, if that happens, let us know. We're fortunate that we have the dual authority. So we have the UK, we have the Cyprus as well, and the whole of Europe. So again, if you find that becomes an issue, let us know, talk to us, we can help you out there. Again, UK pensions, I mentioned the P85. So again, that just allows you to pay your taxes in Cyprus only and get that NT tax code for the UK. You may even want to consider doing a pension transfer as well. So there are a couple of pension structures once you become a non-UK resident that can actually be a little bit more tax beneficial, a little bit more beneficial in terms of structuring for things like inheritance tax as well. Again, I'm not going to spend a long time on this today, but just to make you aware that they do exist. Tax issues around ISAs and UK investments. So obviously, once you become a Cyprus tax resident, your investments in the UK will fall under Cypriot taxation of those investments, not UK taxation. So a great example of this that I like to use is ISAs. Pretty much all of us, when we are living in the UK, saving to an ISA or puts money into ISAs. Why? Because they are tax-free, so it's a bit of a no-brainer to put your money there. The problem you have is when you become a Cyprus tax resident, they are no longer tax-free. They are taxed at your income tax rates or at CGT rates, depending on whether you've got stocks and shares ISA or a cash ISA. So it no longer, that ISA wrapper is only tax-free when you are a UK tax resident. So if you've got a significant amount in your ISAs, you can potentially put yourself into an issue where actually you're suddenly seeing a tax issue on those assets. It's not just ISAs, there's several UK structures which you've got to be careful of. If there's any Irish listeners, I don't know if there are, but similar to the UK pensions, there's bits and pieces you can do with your Irish pensions just to make those a little more tax efficient as well. Financial planning, lump sums. Okay, one thing that we do have here is we have a great lump sum structure, which means that for lump sum investments, it has a zero tax rate in Cyprus. Okay, so much like an ISA works in the UK, this structure works the same way as an ISA does, but as a Cypriot tax resident. So compliant bonds, favorable tax concessions. So if you are looking to generate income from, I don't know, maybe you've sold your property in the UK for £500,000, you're buying a little villa here for 300,000, and you've got 200,000 that you're looking to live off. What we can do with that 200,000 is help you structure that to generate maybe an income from it or to generate some returns in a very cautious manner if that's where you want to be, in order to help you actually manage that lifestyle here in Cyprus. Again, inheritance tax, you do have to be careful with inheritance tax. There is different rules in Cyprus. We would recommend getting a will in Cyprus as well as a will in the UK. And that basically summarizes where we're at. So it's been a fairly quick run through, you know, we get 20 minutes. So, you know, it's to give you an overview of some of the issues that there are there and some of the things you've just got to be careful of. I would urge you, if you're interested, just to drop to the website, which is on the screen there, www.chasebuchanan.com. On there, we have a download which is a Cyprus tax guide download. We also have a Cyprus residency guide download. Now, both of those download PDFs have a whole heap of awesome information. They're free to download. There's no charge for downloading them. They have a load of great information around the tax side of Cyprus and about the residency side of Cyprus. If you are seriously thinking about getting out here, drop to the website, download those guides, a huge range of information, or otherwise, feel free to reach out to me directly as well. My contact details are at the end of this this presentation. So there we go.
Thank you, Andrew. That was fantastic. That was a really brilliant overview and loads of great information in there. And yeah, as Andrew said, his details are at the end. So if you've got really detailed and specific queries about your own personal circumstances, we'll make sure that you're all in touch with each other. But a few sort of more broad and general questions for you, Andrew. Pensions and tax came out on the top of our poll as sort of the biggest concerns for people. So we'll sort of focus a little bit on that. You did touch upon it a couple of times in your presentation, but I just wanted to understand for customers, what is the capital gains tax position if they sell a home in the UK when they're already resident in Cyprus? They've come over, they've been there a while, they then sell their UK home. What happens with capital gains in that instance? Yeah,
sure. So it depends on, assuming it is your primary residence in the UK, okay, so assuming it's the house you were actually living in, where you were actually resident. If you sell that within the first year of coming out here, there's no capital gains tax. If you sell that after more than a year here, there could potentially be capital gains tax, but there are some things you can do in order to make that tax free. Okay, so if that's going to be an issue for you, the trouble with tax questions is they tend to be quite client specific because it will also depend what other assets you've got, and essentially here you can choose different tax bandings, so you can choose how you are taxed here. There's a standard flat rate tax on pensions, which is 5%, or you can choose to be taxed at your marginal rates on income. So you just got to be a bit careful, because depending which version you are in also changes the CGT level slightly as well, the capital gains tax level slightly as well. So, but as a very broad brushstroke, if you're selling it within the first year and it's your primary residence, there will be no CGT to pay. If it's after a year, irrelevant of whether it's your primary residence or not, there may be CGT to pay. And CGT is at 32.5% for most people.
Great advice. Thank you. That's so helpful, Andrew.
Well,
now,
speak to us before you sell it.
Good advice.
Or a tax advisor. It doesn't have to be us. Just speak to a tax advisor.
Lynn's asked a question about buy-to-let income. She's asked
Sure.
how she would be taxed on buy-to-let income. I'm not actually sure if Linda's referring to a Cypriot property that she, in addition to her home that she's going to rent out, or a UK home. So, but for the benefit of everybody, if you could sort of answer on both sides for that.
Okay, so if it is a UK property, so if it's a UK buy-to-let property, you'll still have a UK tax liability on that. Okay, so you'll still have to fill in a tax return each year. And if it's above the annual allowance fee in the UK, you'll still have tax to pay at your marginal income tax rates in the UK. That is also, you also have to report that for Cyprus taxation as well. Again, it's taxed as income here in Cyprus. But if you've paid any tax in the UK on that income, it won't be double taxed under the DTA between the UK and Cyprus. If you have a rental property in Cyprus, then that will be taxed as income tax. You just add that income to your tax return on an annual basis, and you would pay tax at your marginal rates in Cyprus.
Brilliant advice. Thank you so much for that. That's perfect. Now, actually moving on to investments, we've had a question about premium bonds.
Sure.
You mentioned ISAs as obviously tax-free. If we win big on the premium bonds.
Well, is the answer. Assuming that was the question, I jumped in a bit quick.
Yeah, no, that was exactly the question. So yeah. So okay, perfect. Thanks, Andrew.
If you win your million, which you might do, you never know. That could be a hefty tax bill. But it's not to say what you're going to do is move to Cyprus and strip out all of your UK assets. I've still got plenty of clients that have retained their premium bonds. You've just got to bear in mind that the tax treatment of those will change.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm still waiting to win the £1 million, but
so am I. I think I've got it's the little 25 quid's help, the 50 quid helps, but it's you want the big one.
Now, a question's come in from Sandra. I know we've said that quite a lot of the customers today are looking at sort of retirement homes and moving for retirement to Cyprus, but Sandra is planning on still working for her UK employer. We're all working from home at the moment. Why not do that in the gorgeous Cypriot weather? What's the tax position on working remotely for a UK company?
That is a conversation that really we would have to have individually with the client, because it varies hugely. So I'm not just trying to get away from that, but we literally have to go through the contract wording to see how that will be treated for taxation. Generally speaking, so very, very broadly, you would normally then have DTA. So normally you're still going to be taxed at source, but then you can reclaim. But there are some things you can do depending on the contract wording to be able to. That's a really difficult question to answer, because there's what you could potentially do if your employer agreed to it, which is the most efficient way to do it, is actually get out. The best way to do it would actually be to get out of your employed contract, open up a Cypriot company, depending on your income levels, potentially open up a Cypriot company here, and then basically to transact as the Cypriot company with your current employer. So sorry, really difficult question to answer accurately because it just varies hugely.
No problem at all. I completely appreciate the
there are options for sure. There's definitely options.
Perfect.
But it's a very difficult question to answer in a broad sense.
No problem, Sandra. We'll get you in touch with Andrew to get your specific circumstances and those queries answered. No problem. Now, a question's come in on pensions from a customer, John. Now, I'm going to read this out, and I hope that I get this correct. John's got 1 SIP and 2 defined benefit pension schemes, and just wanted to understand in that example the best way to structure.
Okay, again, quite a client-specific question. It depends. It is the answer, and unfortunately, that doesn't help much in a broad sense. But that is such a difficult question to answer broadly because it really does depend on the client's attitude to risk, what their ultimate goals are, what other assets they perhaps have sat behind that as well. what that overall level of income is looking like it's going to be too, because that's obviously going to have a huge impact on whether you potentially go down the marginal rate route in Cyprus, whether you maybe go down the flat tax route. I would say that is probably a prime example of why you should be speaking to somebody like us. That's probably 50% of the business that we do is UK pensions and restructuring work around them. It could be that the best thing to do is leave it in the SIP. It might even be better, depending depends if you're already taking the money from the DB pensions or whether they're uncrystallized at this point. It's definitely something that's worth having a review. And again, this is what we do. For questions like that, we will basically understand where you are now, what your objectives are, and essentially we'll sit there and go, right, well, these are your options. If you do A, these are the pros and cons. If you go down option B, these are the pros and cons. Option C, pros and cons. And generally the three options with UK pensions is leave it where it is, move it into an alternate UK structure, or move it into like an offshore structure, like a European structure. So that's broadly the three options you have with UK pensions, but which route you go down there really is a matter for individual client preferences and individual client circumstances. So again, definitely options available there, but difficult to comment without more background info.
Of course, I completely understand that, Andrew, and thank you very much for that question.
And it
John,
sounds like I'm saying that a lot, and I apologise.
No, we understand.
It's quite a difficult one to answer generically.
Yeah, of course, we understand, and we'll make sure that we do make all the connections for everybody listening with those specific questions.
And actually, one thing I did just forget to mention, that process we go through in terms of understanding where you are now, where you're getting to, and showing you those options, we don't charge for that either, by the way. So, feel free to use us as a sounding board, and we're happy that what we hope is that just with smart currency, if you get good information from us and you decide to proceed with something, that you'll end up doing the business with ourselves. So that's why we operate in this way.
Perfect. Thanks, Andrew. Now, I am conscious of our time today, but I would like to touch on inheritance, as I know this is a really important issue. First off, what would happen if a customer has moved to Cyprus, they're resident there now, they're tax resident in Cyprus, all that's going fine, but then they inherit money back in the UK from family? What do they do then?
Okay, so generally speaking, that's very, very straightforward. Okay, so assuming you are named as a beneficiary on that estate when that family member passes, you can receive that money without any tax from the Cyprus side. So there may be IHT tax to pay on the UK side, depending on the size of the estate and how it was structured. And that would depend on obviously the settler of the estate, so it depend on whoever had died and how they'd set that up. But from the Cyprus side, you can receive money from an inheritance without any tax liability at all on our side.
Brilliant, very helpful, thank you. And I guess the next question is, we've talked a lot today about the context of property purchase, and that's going to be a huge, if not the biggest, investment for our listeners. What do they do if they want to pass on that property to family? What's the best way to begin structuring that?
The number one priority, and we encourage clients to do this as soon as they get out to Cyprus and become tax resident here, is get a Cypriot will. Okay. So in Cyprus, they still have forced intestacy rules. Okay, so if you die here without a will, Cyprus assets will be distributed according to the forced intestacy rules. Okay, now that basically means that essentially 50% goes to your brothers, essentially first. It's very random. So really, as soon as you get to Cyprus, you need a Cyprus will, which clearly states how your assets will be done. Very easy to get. If you have a will, that will get over any forced intestacy rules. It is that simple. But you need to get yourself a will as soon as possible, because trust me, I've had a couple of clients that have died here where they haven't bothered doing a will, and one of those clients was in probate for about 3.5 years, and it was an absolute nightmare, and the other ended up in probate for about 2.25 years. And that was where, and the one that was in probate for 2.25 years was where her husband had died. And it still took 2.25 years to get the assets that they held in joint names into her name. So get a will that avoids all of those problems. Have a UK will, a Cypriot will, make sure they match, have them in both places. Then you avoid all of those issues from day one, because you never know. You might be crossing over the road, eat some bad shellfish, you know, you never know what's going to happen. So really, really important to get your wills done ASAP. And if you, again, we've got people that we can refer you to if you wanted to do that. So.
That's brilliant advice. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much for that. I think that's about all we've got time for today, but I know there have been some detailed questions, and as promised, the details are on screen for Andrew and Paul if you want to speak to them directly. We'll also pop you an email next week with reconfirming these details and also including a replay link of today's session. If you want to have a listen back, refresh your memory, pass it on to the family, anything like that, please feel free to do that. So thank you all for joining us, whether it's live today on Saturday or you're catching up with this on demand, and thank you to both of our panelists for their expert advice and insight. One last thing to say is we are going to pop a link on screen now to the Your Overseas Home website. We've done loads of sessions like this. We've got some fantastic sessions on Cyprus, covering the details of securing, visas, thinking about some of the legalities. There is a session that does cover a little bit more detail about wills and things like that. So do have a quick look at our website as well to see any of those sessions there. But everything that's left for me to say is thank you for joining us, and we wish you every success and happiness in your move to Cyprus. So thanks from all of us. Take care. Bye.